They said he was born under a silent sky. No thunder. No omen. No prophecy carved into stone. And that, historians would later argue, was the first warning. Because empires fall loudly, but the men who destroy them often arrive quietly. This is not the story of a defeat. This is the story of a man who won too much. Before the banners. Before the legions. Before his name hardened into legend, he was simply a boy watching dust rise from a road that never rested. Caravans passed that road. Armies passed that road. Refugees passed that road. All of them moving away from something they had lost. He asked his father once why no one ever walked toward the ruins. His father answered without looking up. Because victory lives forward. Ruins only remember. The boy remembered that. His earliest education was not letters. It was patterns. He learned how men stood when they were confident. How they shifted their weight when they lied. How silence spread before violence. While others learned sword forms, he learned distances. While others memorized names of kings, he memorized the spaces between decisions. War, to him, was never chaos. It was geometry. Angles of attack. Timings of fear. Moments when courage collapsed into obedience. And from the beginning, something about him disturbed his teachers. He did not rush. He did not boast. He did not celebrate victory. After his first mock battle, when other boys laughed and shouted, he stood alone, watching the field. A commander asked him why. He replied, "I am counting how long the ground remembers the footsteps." The commander laughed. History would not. Real war came early. Border clashes. Raids without names. Skirmishes that never reached the capital's ears. He was given a unit not because he was trusted, but because he was expendable. A quiet commander with nothing to lose was useful. The enemy outnumbered them. They always did. Yet every report returned the same way. Enemy broken casualties, minimal terrain secured. No heroic charges. No reckless gambles. No speeches remembered. Just results. Soldiers began requesting transfer into his command. Not because he inspired them, but because they survived him. That was the beginning of the myth. Not glory. Not courage. Predictability. As his victories accumulated, something else grew with them. Silence. Other generals returned with stories. He returned with maps. Other commanders explained why battles were won. He explained why they were unavoidable. He did not believe in destiny. He believed in pressure. Pressure on supply lines. Pressure on morale. Pressure on commanders who slept too little and trusted too much. He once ended a campaign without fighting a single battle. The enemy army dissolved, hungry, unpaid, leaderless. When asked how he planned it, he answered, "I removed their future." That sentence traveled faster than his armies. Kings began to notice. Success is forgiven. Consistency is feared. When he was summoned to the capital, it was not celebration that awaited him, but calculation. Courtiers measured him with their eyes. Advisors whispered numbers. How many legions had he commanded? How many soldiers owed him their lives? How many victories could be traced to his decisions alone? No crown fears a conqueror. A crown fears a replacement. Still, he was promoted. Because empires rarely stop feeding the machine that protects them. And because no one knew how to make him lose. The war that defined him was not chosen. It arrived fully formed. An enemy too large to ignore. Too proud to negotiate. Too symbolic to defeat quietly. This war required spectacle. The court wanted banners. They wanted marches. They wanted a victory the people could see. For the first time, he hesitated. Not because he doubted victory, but because he understood cost. A war this visible would not end with surrender. It would end with memory. He accepted the command anyway. Because declining would have been another kind of defeat. The campaign unfolded exactly as he predicted. Enemy mistakes. Predictable advances. Miscalculated pride. Battle after battle, won. Cities fell. Roads opened. Allies switched sides. Songs were written. Coins stamped. His name hardened. Not into a hero. Into an inevitability. Closing beat, the warning no one heard. On the night after his greatest victory, he stood alone outside his tent. The battlefield was silent. Not peaceful. Empty. A young officer approached and said, "They will remember this forever." The general replied, "Yes. But not for the reason they think." He looked toward the capital. And for the first time in his life, he did not see the next move. Theme locked, the danger of perfection. When victory becomes identity, loss does not need an enemy. Victory travels faster than armies. By the time he returned to the capital, his reputation had already arrived, distorted, exaggerated, sharpened. Stories followed him through marble corridors. Not stories of courage. Stories of control. They said he could predict battles before scouts returned. That he won wars without drawing his sword. That soldiers obeyed him before orders were spoken. In the capital, this was not admiration. It was diagnosis. The celebration was vast. Crowds filled the streets. Banners draped the towers. The people chanted his name. But inside the palace, applause sounded different. Measured. Timed. Watched. Hands clapped while eyes calculated. Every cheer raised a silent question. How long before he no longer needs us? He stood before the throne, armor polished, expression empty. The ruler praised him loudly. Then paused. Too long. In that pause, everyone understood. Power is not threatened by rebellion. It is threatened by alternatives. Advisors began counting. Not victories, but loyalties. How many veterans followed him from campaign to campaign? How many officers owed their rank to his recommendation? How many soldiers trusted his judgment over distant commands? The numbers were not dangerous individually. Together, they formed a shape. And shapes are how fear becomes policy. They promoted him again. Gave him titles that sounded grand but came with distance. New councils. New protocols. New layers of permission. His authority widened. His freedom narrowed. He understood immediately. This was not reward. It was placement. A powerful man is safest when surrounded. Empires do not fear enemies who lose. They fear men who win too reliably. Because victory creates comparison. And comparison creates alternatives. History remembers conquerors. It forgets stabilizers. Not because they failed, but because they worked. And systems do not memorialize what makes them unnecessary. The most complete victory is the one that leaves no one to think.